As they say in hockey, let's do that hockey.
Play a full 60 minutes.
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep it simple.
Get pucks deep, bring the puck deep, put pucks in deep. We got to keep it simple and just get pucks going forward.
Getting into the forecheck.
We got to keep playing aggressive.
Trying to take away their time and space.
We're focused on tonight. We just got to stick to our game.
Amidst a major heat wave, we are back with the Stanley Cup staying in the heat of Florida and the Panthers building a dynasty, Jake. I'm ready to say it. It's back-to-back championships for the Florida Panthers. Alongside Jake Swanson, I'm Casey Ditzel. We welcome you back to the Fifth Liners podcast here, episode 33. Jake, before we get into the hockey, what's been going on with you?
I feel like this is just a recurring theme for anyone who's been listening to these last couple episodes, but just more baseball. I was telling Casey I've been coaching and playing, and yesterday was the culmination of it, where my coaching, our team lost in the championship round, but felt good about it. They definitely played a really good series, so happy with how they played. Just couldn't get it over the line in that 90-degree heat, so... and then my playing game yesterday did not go as well. We got run ruled, and it was not fun. But I did manage to catch 2 innings in heat, so I'm still in somewhat shape.
Well, update on my status from last week. The golf game has not improved, and I'm still on the verge of retirement here, fighting a lack of air conditioning right now in a back room with minimal lighting and maybe about 95 degrees. And if that sounds horrendous, that's about how bad my golf game's been going. Shot an under par 35 on the front and almost didn't break 50 on the back 9 yesterday. So I thought it was there for a little bit, and it went away just as quickly. The Cup is where we have to start here, Jake, in back-to-back Stanley Cup championships in a repeat of last year, but this time instead of using 7 games, the Florida Panthers again win on home ice in Game 6, beating Edmonton in a pretty dominant fashion. I said it there off the top. I'm ready to call it a dynasty. McDavid limited to 1 goal here in the series. Just dominance all the way through, with the exception of a 7-game series against the Leafs, where at one point they trailed 2-0, but just ran through the Hurricanes. Edmonton was supposed to be kind of the challenge, and everyone was talking about this being the 2 best teams, and pretty clearly that after Edmonton rolled the West, which everyone talks about, the Western Conference being so strong. Well, Florida made quick work of them and really asserted their dominance, especially late in that series. Say what you want about a couple Edmonton injuries. I'm going dynasty. Are you going to match that?
I'm going to say soft, yes, and agree with you. The soft is because I think when we were talking about the definition of dynasty with Maddie a couple episodes ago, it was just, I think the consistency is going to be the thing for me. So this 3rd season, whether they get to the Cup or not, I don't think that's a huge requirement if it's like back to back to back, because obviously that hasn't been done since the Islanders. But I mean, you look at the last 3 ones, or the last 2 back to backs. It was the Penguins in 16-17, and it was the Lightning in 2021. With like the Penguins, they got one in 2009. They had a little bit of a drought, and then they went back to back in 16-17. I would still say that era of Sid and that Sid Letang and Malkin, I still think that's a dynasty. And then with Tampa Bay, I think that's where the consistency kind of drops off for me, where they haven't really done anything in the last couple of years in terms of getting to the Cup final. So I think even if they take a couple of years off of not winning a Stanley Cup or not getting to the Cup final, but they do it in a later year, let's say like 2-3 years down the line, I'm still okay with calling them a dynasty. But I think that 3rd Cup has to come to solidify it, because you can win back to back, but again, look at the Lightning. If they don't capitalize on the window they have now with the players they have, I don't think I'd call their back-to-back a dynasty. I'd just say it's a really good run from that team.
Well, you jumped right in front of what I was going to ask next there, being the comparison between the three potential dynasty names recently in the Penguins, the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the Florida Panthers here. So you're going Penguins, Panthers, Lightning by that logic then, and the Panthers still with some to prove.
Yeah, I think that's fair too, because I think the Panthers have definitely proved that they belong at the top of the Eastern Conference. I think the Western Conference has a lot to sort out in terms of getting their best teams into the Cup final. And I no shade to Edmonton. I just don't think that I think their playoff runs have been much better than their regular season. So I'd really like to see a Western Conference team that just stays consistent throughout the entirety of the season, where they're almost top of the West in their respective regular seasons and they dominate the playoffs like the Oilers did. So I think there's a little bit to prove, but it's not much, honestly. I really like the direction that the Panthers took when they realized, hey, we got this kid named Matthew Tkachuk. Maybe we should put some guys around him and see what goes on.
Well, a little bit to prove certainly is right there. And the opportunity for the Cup window is, in a way, just opening for this Florida group. They've got Barkov, Tkachuk, Reinhart, Verhaeghe, Lundell, Forsling, and Seth Jones all signed through at least 2030 or longer in a few of those cases. Some of them on the 8-year deals up to 2033. Think about that one. And then you've also got Rodriguez, Luostarinen, Boquist, Kulikov, all signed through the 2027-28 season. That is mind-boggling when you think about the core there. In just the first four names that I threw off, Barkov, Tkachuk, Reinhart, Verhaeghe alone would be enough to build a Stanley Cup roster around. Add in Seth Jones, add in Forsling on the defensive line, and then some of those depth players, Luostarinen, Lundell, Boquist, Evan Rodriguez, if you want to call him a depth player. He's a top 6 guy. Oh, and don't forget about Sergei Bobrovsky. He's got one more year on his contract, so still through next year at least, and you can bet they're going to, add on to that one. He is disproven, to go a little bit off track here, my whole theory about goaltenders, because he would be way above my threshold, what we talked about last year on a $10 million contract. But they've been able to work around it, not signing the forwards to huge, big money Leon Draisaitl $14 million deals, and have Barkov there on the back end at $10 million. But you got to be a little bit terrified if you're anybody in the NHL, and especially that Atlantic. How about the Toronto Maple Leafs, who now are getting it in what you might call closer to a rebuild, retool, if you want to, with Marner on the way out, maybe Tavares going away. Boston, full rebuild now. You could almost blame the Florida Panthers for that when you think back to Marchand and Pasternak there having a chance to move on past Florida, and Florida getting it done over them en route to their first Stanley Cup final there. That goes a different way. This is a completely different story.
Yeah, 100%. And I think this window for the Panthers, they really got to be smart with like the two-way contracts, I think, that they offer in this offseason, because again, you're not going to have the Carolina money that they have in this offseason, but I think if they make a couple of smart signings in the bottom 6 to just kind of bolster that depth, and then maybe get someone behind Bob that can take 20 games off of his schedule and just know that he's going to get rest day in there where he can just know and be prepared for that and know that he's going to be playing every single minute of every playoff game like he did this year. So I think, and upcoming with the draft too, you got to wonder if they're looking at some potential college guys that are NHL ready and ready to make that jump. And I think the goaltending class here isn't as strong, I think, as previous years. But I think they could find a college goalie or two that could play a couple of games in the A and be ready to go to back up Bob early to mid-season next year. So going to be interesting to see what they do with the draft coming up.
Is Seth Jones the biggest trade deadline steal of all time. Chicago retained 26% of his 9.5 million AAV, and they have him now at that rate for the next 5 seasons. His cap hit dropped by almost 2.5 million, 7 million AAV for the next 5 years. Oh yeah, and they already got the Stanley Cup out of that trade. Florida trading Spencer Knight and a 2026 first for their second consecutive Stanley Cup, coming with Seth Jones and his first time with his name on the back of the cup, or the side of the cup, or the front of the cup, however you want to look at it.
Yeah. Obviously, very good trade in hindsight for the Panthers. And honestly, I think the Blackhawks did pretty well too. And I think we could all see that Seth Jones wasn't quite the fit that Chicago needed in this Connor Bedard era. So I think getting a younger goaltender that has some potential to be your starter going forward and getting a first-round pick out of it isn't too bad. But I think where they did screw up is retaining that much salary. I don't think it was necessary, really. Maybe if you threw in another draft pick, it would have been fine to not retain that salary. But I think that's probably where they screwed up. I'm okay with the return being Knight in a first. That really sounds pretty good on paper, as long as Knight lives up to it and they are smart with how they draft. But I mean, realistically, if they have the same kind of season next year, it's going to be a late first round pick. It's going to be somewhere in the 20s, maybe even 32 if they go back to back to back. So I'm okay with it. I don't think it was too much of a steal, but I think it was definitely worth the Panthers giving up that first and Knight.
Not too much of a steal. 5 years on a guy that's going to solidify the blue line. Which one are you going farther on then? And would you say that Marchand is the bigger steal of the two, or they just give up a conditional second, now first round draft pick? And that is the 32nd pick of the first round.
I do think it was Marchand. And the reason, again, is one, the value that you gave up to get, and two, Seth Jones, I think, what is he? Because this 5-year deal, it'll run him till 2030, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Seth Jones, he's how old now? He's 32, I think. 30. So he'll be 35 at the end of that deal. So he's just in his prime now. I think if this 7 million AAV, if this becomes a problem, I feel like he's one of the first to go if they need some more cap space. Wow. So that I know I'm sounding a little bit controversial here, but I don't know. I really admire the way he played in Florida, and I think he fits the system well. But if they have to get younger and they have to get cheaper to keep like your core guys in the forward core, I'm not sure if they're going to keep Seth around. And I could see him being here for the next 3 years. I don't know about those last two.
And that might be all you need for 3 plus a couple at this rate. The Stanley Cup could be 5-time repeat champions in Florida by the time that GM Jake Swanson is dealing Seth Jones. And that is a wild and probably well overreacted statement there. How about Sam Bennett? Maybe the most fitting Conn Smythe. This was described by a lot of media outlets, maybe the most bad-blooded Stanley Cup final between these two teams in history, or at least in recent memory. Sam Bennett, the definition of grease, the definition of rat, if you want to take it away from Brad Marchand. But, you know, thinking of the comments Marchand made, how he's so glad to be on this team, and I'm so glad not to have to worry about Benny punching me in the face. That was what knocked Marchand out of the playoffs playing against the Panthers a year ago. Now they're teammates as the Leaf Killer and the Rat King Brad Marchand teams up with Conn Smythe, Sam Bennett. Your thoughts on his performance?
Absolutely loved it. And I think Bennett is one of the core pieces that I don't think Florida can let get away. And we'll touch on his comments in a second. But I think even prior to that, if you're Florida, you have to keep this guy. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And I just don't see how Panthers can play the Panther style of hockey without a guy like Sam Bennett in the lineup. And I know Marchand does the same thing almost and is like the same style of player, but the leadership factor of Bennett being around these guys a lot longer, I think that does have a factor because, again, Marchand, you were dealt at the trade deadline. You only had a couple months to really get the chemistry going. Obviously, it went really well, but I think being a leader on a team is knowing the players inside and out, and I think Bennett has really done that. So I think you have to keep him. He's a must keep, and if you don't, it's going to be a really tough replacement. And I don't even know if there is a replacement in the league or coming up.
Well, he's got the chants going from the top of the elbow room, him and his dad, with the crowd chanting 8 more years, 8 more years. Another absolute threat to the Atlantic Division would be 8 more years of Sam Bennett in a Panthers jersey, at least for the near term. And then after that, he quiets the crowd at the nightclub. I'm not effing leaving, Jake. Sam Bennett is just setting up, a great signing to stay as a Florida Panther, and imagine they get him on a discount deal. Brad Marchand has implied the same thing. He also made a joke with Bennett, where are we going next year? But Brad Marchand has to be on one of the most legendary Stanley Cup celebration runs of all time here. Him and Alex Ovechkin, pretty comparable back from 2018. And thinking about my all-time favorite Stanley Cup parade speech there. We're the Stanley Cup champions. Alex Ovechkin. But Marchand has just been memeing the entire league, and he's like a walking news outlet right now.
Oh my God, yeah. And I mean, could you draw it up any better for a Florida team too? Like just the personality alone of Marchand. It feels like he should have been born in Florida, but he is a really good player to have on your team, a really good or a really bad player to play against. So I think again, this Panther style of hockey that they've been cultivating for the last couple of years, Marchand just hit the ground running right when he got traded. So I think it would be a very, again, smart signing for him to come back to Florida. But again, I mean, there's so many other teams that could use someone like him. And I mean, God forbid he goes within the Atlantic to Toronto. I know that's been said a couple of times. And, or if he goes out west, joins one of those teams trying to make a Western Conference run, we'll see. But I think logically and emotionally, I do want him to stay in Florida and have the time of his life with this core team. I think it would be a great story to end for him, especially now that he's getting towards retirement age. And I think he'll have a really good time becoming a snowbird a little bit early here.
All right, Aaron Ekblad is in that group of UFAs this year. You've got Sam Bennett, you've got Brad Marchand, Aaron Ekblad. One, if you're Bill Zito and thinking forward as an outsider, do you think there's a chance we see all three return? And then the tough question: if you can keep two of the three, who are you re-signing here?
Oh, this is really tough.
And what deals? There we go.
What deal?
Make it even better.
You're testing my knowledge here with the cap space here. This is so tough. With this, I think Bennett has to be my first pick. I think you have to keep him around. And between Marchand and Ekblad, if it had to be one of the two, I think I'm gonna. I hate saying this, but I think I have to go Ekblad. I think.
Wow.
Yeah, I just think that having that balance on offense and defense was what made Florida so good, and I think one of the younger kids in this organization could step up and have some kind of Marchand-esque role. I don't think he's going to be as good as Marchand would be, but I think if you have Ekblad in that top four alongside either Seth Jones or Forsling, I think that really gives you such a solid top four where you can rotate like Kulikov or Mikula into that top four, and you'll be fine for a blue line for the foreseeable future.
And the blue line could be the question mark. Right now they have Mikkola and Jones, Forsling and Kulikov, but that third pair completely up for grabs. The forward core is going to be just as strong as it was. And think about some of the names sitting in the rafters this entire run. You've got Nico Sturm, who I know wants to go back, and also Jacob Plug for us. Another Clarkson Golden Knight name going up to the rafters. Sturm headed to the Olympics, and again, a Stanley Cup champion. We will certainly be talking to him at some point this summer on our show here. And I made a joke. I sent him a text today as all the Cup Parade videos were coming out. And I said, no karaoke's this year. That was probably my all-time favorite video from the Colorado Cup Parade was him karaokeing down the line, high-fiving the fans. Tad Johnson was pretty pumped up about that one, but he didn't give us any clickbait there this year. For me, I think it's the forward core, and even though you've got the questions on the defense pairing, Ekblad's been the one that's kind of been, rumored to be too expensive. Would be one. He could go out. He's got back-to-back Stanley Cups. Maybe go get his bag. There's been some connections maybe to Buffalo if they are looking to retool and give up Bo Byram, maybe Samuelson there. For the offensive side, I think Bennett's going to be willing to take a cut if they get him at $8 million instead of 10, maybe 11, what he could get on the market. Marchand takes a deal in the $3-4 million range, like 3 years at $3 or $4 million for Marchand. The way he played this year, the guy doesn't seem to age.
I think that's about what Tavares was going to try or what the lease we're offering Tavares too. So
right, and I think that's where they brought Jones in on that $5 or the 5-year deal. And I think Jones is taking that spot that Ekblad would be. Jones runs the power play. That was Ekblad's job. Now he's there for 5 years. You've got the guys like Forsling, Mikkola to kind of lock down the defensive end there, pair one of them to eat big minutes with Jones. I think you're going to see Ekblad walk if they can't keep him and keep all three at a heightened discount here. But it's definitely the biggest, storyline going forward here is keeping the Cup window. That's where I want to go now and go to the losing side. We've got the Edmonton Oilers. All kinds of concern. We're going to talk about free agency next, so I'm going to save the number one reason for concern being what Connor McDavid had to say following this year. But thinking about him staying for now. The projected cap space for 2025 is $11 million. That was going into this weekend. Trent Frederick is supposed to be signing 8 years times $4 million. That would come out of that $11 million. I don't believe as of the time we're recording right now, and you can double check me on that, I don't believe that deal has been finalized yet. So without that being done, $11 million of cap space. You've got Jeff Skinner, Corey Perry, Connor Brown, Kasperi Kapanen, Klingberg, and Bouchard all kind of up for grabs right now. Bouchard is RFA. The rest of those names are UFA this year. Next year, in 2026, all UFAs, McDavid, Evander Kane, Victor Arvidsson, Adam Henrique, Matthias Ekholm, Jake Wallman, Brett Kulak, Troy Stetcher, Stuart Skinner, Cal Pickard, and RFA Podkolzin. That's just about the entire Oilers roster. And in with that, just about their entire core, with the exception of Draisaitl, who's in there after this year, will be starting his 8-year, $14.5 million deal. Is this the last year that Edmonton's Cup window is open, or has it already closed that they couldn't get the deal done this year?
Ooh, that's tough. Well, first,
loaded question.
Yeah, I'll VAR check you real quick. It looks like it has been confirmed.
Okay. So drop that down to about $7 million in cap space coming into this offseason.
Yeah, so it'll run through 32-33, and he'll earn $4 million a season. Which honestly, I think that's a sneaky good signing for them because if
Really?
yeah, I think
All right, let's go there first before we go cup window because I
yeah,
think it is completely questionable. Career high 40 points. That was 2023-24, so not too far removed.
yeah,
15 points this season in 58 games played. He had 4 points, just 1 goal in the playoffs, and he played 22 games.
yeah.
8 years seems outrageous for a set schedule of work that has not been proven anywhere over 40 points. And that's not 40 goals, which would obviously be well over 4 million. But
hmm
you would think you could get a 4 years times 4 million if you're going to go for the higher money, less term.
Yeah.
8 years with that high of a cap hit, 7 years down the line. But you like the sign.
I do. And
The other side, yeah.
I think with this, I think it's all about what he could be. And he's still 27. He's not that old. And with
Right.
Boston, I think with that core especially early in his career, like 19, 20, 2021, you still had a lot of the heavy hitters in Boston's lineup that he was kind of stuck behind, especially on the power play. Whereas this, we know Edmonton's very top heavy, but look at Frederick on like a PP2 and seeing what he can do on that line, and maybe as a 3C, 2C if either Draisaitl or McDavid get injured. And I think it would be an interesting just sight to see him at his full potential with a lot of ice time, more ice time than he got in Boston. So I agree, 8 years seems a little bit too long, but I think the $4 million price point for a 3C, 2C isn't outrageous because you can still work around that. That's still a tradable contract if you want to. And like, because most teams won't bat an eye if they're looking for an extra forward for a playoff run, and it's going to be $4 million rather than $8, $9, $10 million price tag. So I think it's at least affordable and at least movable as long as there's no, I don't know if there's any no trade clauses or no movement clauses in this, but I would assume not, but we can double check that. And I think, yeah, that's just my opposite perspective. I think Frederick is a good player, and I think he could get some meaningful ice time with Edmonton here. Let's go to the cup window here, and with that question, I'm gonna stick to my guns and say this was one of the last chances Edmonton had with the entire core together to bring it home. And I'm really scared for next year just because there's going to be so much more pressure on them. I mean, there was already enough pressure on them the first 2 times. Again, first Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup. Could that have been then the last 2 years? 100% yes, if something bounced the other way. But now with the third consecutive time, you're getting into, unfortunately, Buffalo Bills territory. We're going to the Super Bowl 4 times in a row and couldn't bring home a single one of them. And then we saw what the Bills did. The next 20, 30 years, they couldn't get back into the playoffs until Josh Allen saved them. So I'm really worried about keeping them together, especially if McDavid asks for what he's worth, like a 15, even maybe breaking it in $16 million deal. That really
about Bouchard there too.
Yeah.
You got to get him what sounds like maybe 10, 11 million right now as an RFA.
I was about to say the only bright side is that he's an RFA. So at the very least, if you can't afford him, you'll get so many picks back for him. I think it would be at that price point. I think it would be like almost every pick that team has to offer that offer sheet. So that's a silver lining in a really bad situation. But yeah, looking at that top 6 right now with McDavid there, it looks fine. But once you take him out of there, again, Draisaitl has proved he can be that 1A type scorer. So that's no problem. But the whole thing with Edmonton is they have this two-headed monster with Draisaitl and McDavid. Once you take that away, you have to really rework your identity. So if he stays, I'm a little bit more confident, but I think it's really coming up against the wire if they want to get one of these Stanley Cups, because again, this depth, it's there, but I don't know how much confidence I have in it.
We talked about the core of Florida and the length of term, and the year we had was 29-30. There are just 3 Edmonton Oilers, 2 that will be signed past 2029-30. It is Leon Draisaitl, who just signed, and a massive ticket at that. None of those Panthers contracts are even close to that number. You've got Darnell Nurse at 9.25 until 2030. Draisaitl will go till 33, and Nugent Hopkins ends in 29.
Oh, and
That's it.
the recent signing too, Trent Frederick. So Frederick will be there.
Frederick.
Yeah.
Right. And that's it. Out of that core, Hyman, closer to long term there. You've got him at 2029. And Podkolzin, if they can get him RFA, he wouldn't be UFA until 28, 29 if they find some way to extend him for a couple more years. I think he's going to be a big piece of the future here. He's been a huge star this year at $1 million. But for me, man, it's hard to see, Jake, that this team has much success after next year. And it sounds like Evander Kane might be on the way out. But boy, it's, they're tight against the cap. If they can get rid of Kane, and they're probably going to have to retain if they're trading him away. That's only $4 or $5 million. It's going to be tough to bring any big stars and big difference makers to contend there at a limited cap. So they're going to have to get creative, and that doesn't even come close to addressing the goaltending situation. You're probably going to have to go through with Skinner and Pickard until at least the end of next season when all those big name UFAs come up. So with that, looking at free agency, Connor McDavid, in no rush to re-sign, quote, ultimately still need to do what's best for me and my family. And a lot of that press conference seemed demoralized, seemed foresighted, and thinking heavily about his future in Edmonton. Obviously, it's been well documented how much he loves Edmonton, how much he would want to stay there. His wife has roots with business in the city. But what we just talked about, the questions about cups, he also said in that quote, he wants to find a place where he can win and win repeatedly. Is McDavid an Edmonton Oiler when we come up to the 2026 Stanley Cup playoffs?
I'm going to say yes, only because I think his value for trade is so high. I don't know many teams that would be able to pay it at a trade deadline move. And because we've seen some blockbuster trades before, but this would be rivaling the Gretzky trade when he got traded from the Oilers to the Kings. And I mean, there were so many things involved in that. And I don't know that many teams that, one, have the cap space and two, have the assets to do that. So I think he stays until he hits free agency next year. And if they don't win a cup, I see him going somewhere else. I see a couple destinations, but my long shot and my my kind of heartstring one would be
Flip it right here.
McDavid to Pittsburgh.
All right.
I want to see him and Sid go for one last run, but for Sid and Gino and Letang all hang their skates up. We already saw Flower go off into the sunset with a great performance in this season. I want to see Sid, Gino, and Letang have that same thing. And I think McDavid, with those two, I mean, we saw the chemistry between them on Team Canada. I can't even imagine them during an 82 game regular season where he has the reins and he has the control and he gets the best, one of the best Canadian players in the entire game to do it with him. So that's my long shot.
Notorious for the $8.7 million contract. McDavid comes over. You think the captain's forcing him to sign 9.7?
I think that would be really fun, but no, I think Sid would understand that he needs to get what he does. Sid does that out of his respect and love for Pittsburgh. I don't think he would expect someone coming in to do that, but it would be a fun story. But I think I'm sticking with that. I think not really. The Pittsburgh thing is more of a long shot for me, but I think there's not enough assets and not enough teams with the assets for him to go somewhere at next year's trade deadline unless something insane happens and there's like a Mitch Marner or an Austin Matthews trade. I think that would like be the only caliber of player, or like a Nathan McKinnon. Like that would be the caliber of player Edmonton would be asking for back if you want Connor McDavid. And for a half a year rental and no guarantees that he'll sign unless you win a cup, that's not worth it for me, even if I'm a contending team.
Well, we're high-flying fantasy hockey general managers, and you know what it would take to get Connor McDavid off any of our teams, and that's not even thinking about futures values. That's usually just for the remainder of the season. You're Stan Bowman. Now I'm going to put you on the hot seat.
Mm-hmm.
Connor McDavid comes at some point this offseason or at some point early next season. I'm not going to be an Oiler after next summer when July 1st comes.
Yeah.
Do you ride it out and give it one last chance with all the sentiment we just talked about, the trouble and the UFA and the number of needed re-signings upcoming? Do you try to go one last time, try to let that core group that's left go for a third straight and try to get over the hump knowing you're losing him? Or are you going to throw out the greatest player maybe of all time, at least the greatest player on the ice right now, and trade for whatever you can get back?
Whew, man, you're really testing me tonight, Ditz. Oh boy. I think for the sake of, I think the extra half of the season makes so much of a difference to me, because if this was a trade deadline, Connor McDavid saying like, hey, we're not in a good spot, I don't think we're gonna come back for this, I think I would say, all right, well, let's see if we can make the playoffs. If not, good luck, we'll see you. If it's the full season, I think I would have to say let's try and work out a trade, because the amount of time now that a team has to re-sign him before he hits free agency has now doubled. And he has a new team he can start new with and play the entire season with. It's not just a rental going to the Stanley Cup playoffs. So, I mean, what do you even ask for it, though? I think that's the biggest thing is like, I mean, even going back, hold on, let's see what the details of the Gretzky trade were to see if we can make a little bit of a comparison. Because I remember it was really, really big. And, I mean, let's see. Sent Gretzky, Marty McSorley, and Mike Krashelnyski. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say that. For Jimmy Carson, Martin Jelena, and LA's first-round draft picks in 89, 91, and 93, as well as $15 million in cash. And $15 million.
Which you can't do anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, now you're going to do the equivalent.
Yeah, I'm going to look up the inflation calculator real quick.
This would have been pre-salary cap as well.
Yes. So 1988, 15 and 00000.
Hey, you're really getting into the weeds here.
Yeah, I like to do it. Let's see. So that would be $41 million just about in cash today. So 3 first-round picks, $41 million in cash, and 2 pretty good players in exchange for Gretzky and two players as well. So you look at that comparison. In today's world, that would be something of like McDavid for, I'd have to say, at least 4 first-round picks and some players to make the money work. And he's got a hit of what, 15 mil right now? So that's at least 2 top-end players because not enough players are making near that 10 million mark. Or like 3 or 4
He's
role
only
players.
12.5 right now.
Oh, he's
So
12.5?
Yep.
Not quite as bad, but still 2 higher players at least, or 1 very good player and 1 like role player. So that's a lot. And who has the assets to do it? I think that's the biggest question here is who has the assets.
You got someone would find it.
Yeah.
You know, here I might be crazier. If I'm the general manager, I'm letting it go. I'm going to give McDavid and Draisaitl one last chance because I think it would give you the best chance to re-sign him. If they go out and win, maybe he comes back, changes his mind, but you know how bad they want it. And I think I would be willing to put my career, the rest of my job on the line and give him one last chance. But man, it's gonna be the story until he either signs or we get to next year and either the trade deadline movement or he walks to free agency as an Oiler, and we're gonna be following it pretty closely here for the rest of the summer. Big news for your Ducks, Jake. Not a positive yet. Zegras to Philly. Philadelphia receives budding star. Oh no. Trevor Zegras.
My only Ducks jersey.
Oh no. And now it is just a memory.
Oh.
Anaheim picks up Poling, Columbus's 2025 second rounder, and a 2026 fourth. How's it going in Ducks land, Jake?
Oh, everyone wants to fire the GM. That's all I've been seeing. And I follow Ducks Talk podcast as well. Shout out to them. They're a really good podcast if you guys want to listen to them. But they did a nice quote analysis of both the GMs. And the Ducks GM was like, oh, yeah, I didn't really know what the value of Zegras was because we never really explored trades with him because we wanted to keep him. But we got who we wanted. We got what we wanted. So we're happy. And then Briere on the other side in Philly was like, oh, yeah, usually with the Zegras talks, it was just Anaheim not wanting to let him go. But we managed to make a deal. So what was it? Was it they said this really well in their caption, too. So credit to them. I agree. What was it? Was it you never explored the trade market with Zegras, or was it actually explored and you just didn't get enough? Like, I don't know, man. I understand trading Zegras because he hasn't really produced like he would in his Calder Cup season, but I just don't know, man. It's a tough one to swallow because he looked like he was going to be the face of the franchise, and he was that flashy player that had all the highlight reel goals, and he was the guy that got people to go to games in Anaheim. I mean, not a lot of people, unless you're a hockey fan, know about the Mason McTavishes or the Lucas Dostals of that, or the Radko Gudashes. Like, if you're looking at hockey in California and you're looking at Ducks hockey, you were talking about Trevor Zegras. So I think it's a big blow to the Ducks organization. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I understand. Like, you're getting as much value as you can out of him now before he goes to RFA, and you're trying your best to work with the top 3 in Carlson, Gauthier, and McTavish. You're trying to make those guys the face of your franchise, and Zegras was kind of just getting in Carlson's way, I think, for the 1C. So it's tough. It's funny because I do really like Ryan Poehling. I liked him in Pittsburgh when he was there, and he's a really fast skater, so he could bring some life into the bottom 6, but obviously not the same type of scorer and dynamic playmaker as Zegras is. So it's tough for me. I understand it, but why does Anaheim have to do this every time to me?
Well, the Michigan is going to be flowing everywhere into Pennsylvania and Philadelphia specifically. We've already seen what Matvei Michkov can do. Well, all of a sudden, John Tortorella is not there to stop it, and Trevor Zegras. This could be a fun team to watch all of a sudden. Since the end of the season, Greg Cronin was fired. Joel Quenneville brought in. They trade for Chris Kreider. They now trade for Trevor Zegras, and they also brought in Jacob Trouba a while ago. So you've got the veteran guys coming in Kreider and Trouba. You've got Zegras on the way out, and now some links. Jeff Merrick hinted at it on the sheet. Maybe thinking about a future move to a green team, Jake. Would that be Robertson?
I think that's a good possibility, and I think that would be really cool to bring in someone like Jason Robertson. I think he fits kind of the timeline the Ducks are thinking. He would be more of a veteran forward as compared to a Gauthier or a Carlson. But looking at their top six right now, it's Gauthier, Carlson, Killorn, Kreider, McTavish, Terry. I like that first lineup. I hope Carlson can really step into that 1C role and have a breakout year. I think that's really what everything is hinging on, because I don't think McTavish, even though he's still young, I think I'd rather have him as a 2C than a 1C. I think his face-off taking and his two-way game is too important to kind of get into the offensive capabilities, but I think Carlson could be that producer, that scorer, that playmaker. So with Gauthier on the left and Kreider on the left wing too, I think this could be a team that sneakily races for a wild card as long as the blue line kind of holds up. I think that's where we were talking about this a little bit earlier before the show. That's where my concern lies with this team. I think with your D pairing, it's really tough to say you're very confident in them. And I mean, you've got the two established guys on the right in Gudish and Trouba. On the left, you have more of the rookies, second years in Lacombe and Zellweger. And then that bottom pairing, Mintyukov and Hellison. Hellison's probably not going to be moving up that. Mintyukov has a chance, but I don't know if he's got as much potential as Lacombe or Zellweger. So it's going to be interesting. I really want them to do well this year, obviously, just being biased, but I could see it going pretty well as long as that blue line holds up. And I mean, we've got Lucas Dostal, who really has stepped into that starter role. What's going to happen to John Gibson? Who knows? He's been said to have been traded, I don't know, the past 4 years. If they're going to trade him, they got to trade him soon, because his value just steadily decreasing. He's still on a $6 million AAV contract, and I think actually sneakily Philly would be a good contender for him as well, because they've been trying to find goaltending that's not named Samuel Ersson for a very long time. So interesting. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts as like an outsider who's not really into Ducks lore as much as I am.
I'm just wondering what comes next, because I think, and exactly what you said, they've got a pretty strong core of forwards here. And if they could get maybe a trade for a shorter term defenseman that could make some impact, all of a sudden the Ducks, and I can't believe I'm saying this, could be a contender to kind of sneak in the West. Still a long ways away. We'll wait and see. A team that might be in trouble, and talking about closing windows, the Dallas Stars are desperately trying to free up some cap. They sent Mason Marchment to Seattle for 2 picks, a 2025 fourth, 2026 third, then extend Maverick Bourque 1 year, $995,000. So one check mark off the Dallas Stars summer, avoiding the offer sheet risk on Maverick Bourque, who hasn't had a chance really to this point, but has all kinds of budding future from what he's done in the AHL. The Stars are limited to just about $2 million in cap space going into this year's free agency. And UFAs, Jamie Benn, Evgeny Dodonov, Mikhail Granlund, Colin Blackwell, Cody Ceci, Brendan Smith, all UFAs. Where do you see Dallas going next here? And their D right now are a little bit solidified. And a lot of that revolves around Heiskanen coming back healthy too. But you've got Lindell and Heiskanen on the top pair, Harley and Lyubushkin on the second pair, Lian Bichsel, who looked pretty good in the playoffs with Matt Dumba. I wonder if maybe that comes with making a trade and bringing a guy like Trey Taylor up as a rookie on a minimum deal, league minimum at 775 might be exactly what Dallas needs, and take a shot on a guy like Taylor.
Yeah, and that would be really fun to see him getting a shot on a contending team here. But yeah, it's going to be real. I don't think, and they also re-signed Duchesne. I think it was a 4-year deal, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 4-year, $4.5 million AAV. So
which is a pretty good deal there too.
Yeah, good deal, but again, it did kind of eat up the last money that they kind of had, taking it down like you said.
Center though. Yeah. Question marks. I would say around maybe playoff performance, but I like that deal a lot. And I was actually a Hurricanes fan. Sorry to cut in here, but I was really hoping Duchesne was going to get to market and Carolina could pounce all over him with the money they have available and the need for a center. But I really like that signing there in Duchesne.
Yeah, I do too. And I think with Bork and Steele on that third line too, I really liked Sam Steele as well in that playoffs. So I think they've got a good group of young forwards behind the aging Tyler Seguin, but I don't think they're going to be able to re-sign almost anyone. I think Granlund's probably going to walk. Ben, unless he takes a really friendly team deal, is probably going to walk. And there goes two really big contributors on this Stars playoff team. So I think, like you said, they're going to have to dig into the farm and really find some prospects that are willing to come up and do the grunt work on that third and fourth line. Because I think their top six with Robertson, Hintz, Rantanen, Seguin, Johnston, and Duchesne is completely fine. And I think they're good with that. I think really it becomes that depth in the forward core where you're really concerned, and especially that fourth line. I don't think they really have anybody left from that last year. So if they can make some smart two-way signings and see if they can find, again, maybe a college kid that goes undrafted in this year's draft to kind of bring in, or if they draft well and they have someone that's ready to go right away, I think that's probably their best option, because $2 million in this market is probably not going to cut it for 3 NHL caliber fourth liners. So
Jonathan Toews is headed home. He's going back to Winnipeg, a $2 million deal that could turn into $5 million quickly if he can lead the Winnipeg Jets to what would be his 4th Stanley Cup and Winnipeg's first ever. Looks like he'll slot in around the second center, which was what Winnipeg probably needed to address at the trade deadline, and they didn't do, having that trust in Nemestikov. Well, if he can come in healthy, Toews is a perfect slot for that 2C. That moves Nemestikov down to the 3C role, which is perfectly fitting, and he's probably overachieving at. Winnipeg could be a wagon coming up. The big question mark, 37 years old, 2 years removed from his last game. Do you see Jonathan Toews being effective as he comes into the Jets lineup this year?
I think I do. And I think with that, I don't think he has to be what he was in Chicago, which I think is a big thing, where it was really him and Kane running the show on offense. So I think with Kyle Connor, with Scheifele, with Velarde, with Perfetti, you have enough offensive firepower that Toews just has to do what Toews does and wins faceoffs and plays that 200-foot game. I think with him in that 2C, again, he doesn't have to be the face of the franchise. He's just a veteran contributor that's ready to go. So as long as he steps into that role and embraces it, I think he'll be okay. Now, obviously, the big questions there are, can he sustain this pace for 82 games after being 2 years removed? I think yes, but it's going to be interesting to see how he handles, especially those first few weeks back into the season, back into the grind. Because again, 2 years removed where he was dealing with health issues and wasn't really in that cycle of getting prepared for games constantly and resting. So I think early in the season, you may see him have a slow start. Maybe Nemestikov has to take back that 2C just for a couple games for him to get his feet under. But I think coming towards the trade deadline and then towards next year's playoffs, I think he'll find his stride. I have confidence. Again, very good veteran presence, very good hockey IQ. I think he's going to bring a lot to this Jets team that just can't seem to get past the Western Conference Finals in any of their runs. So hopefully that he does well. And hey, I mean, he's got a really good D-core behind him and also one of the best goalies in the game in Connor Hellebuck. So I think he's really happy to be returning home to this kind of team.
And we'll close on the biggest news and biggest signing of the offseason so far. The Rempire State Building continues. Matt Rempe will be around a 2-year extension in New York. Jake, the PWHL Draft tonight here on Tuesday. What do you got so far? And Brooke McQuigg, who was supposed to be on, unfortunately, was decimated by a tornado on her internet connection. So she lives out in the docks up in Bowmanville, Ontario, trying to rekindle her internet. Unfortunately, we'll have her as well at some point coming up here in the summer. But our next show, hopefully to have a recent draft pick, as we'll look forward to the NHL draft upcoming this Friday and look back on tonight's PWHL draft. But some big signings going on leading into this prospect draft as we get ready for Tuesday night.
Yeah, Case, and it's been very active free agency window. We'll go through some of the big ones, and I mean, obviously, Vancouver and Seattle, the new expansion teams, have been very active, as they have to be, to make sure that their depth is up to scratch and ready to go for this season. Let's go through some of these. The biggest one that I saw early was Hannah Miller going to PWHL Vancouver on a 3-year deal. I think that's a huge signing for the Scepters. Another really good, or sorry, not the Scepters, for Vancouver. I think that's a really good signing for them. Hannah Miller, really good forward and really killed it this year. Was up in the league lead in goals up until the midway point of the season. But yeah, 24 points in 29 games this year. She had 14 points in 23 games last year. So she will get you that contributor in the forward core. Vancouver continued with the signing of Michael Kava and Teresa Vaginova. Again, 2 more forwards they add to their arsenal. And then let's see, Toronto responded with Elaine Julian and Claire Dalton there. Another one that I really liked was the re-signing of Natalie Spooner and Jesse Comfer with Toronto. I think that's going to be a really huge boost for them. Haley Skamura going to Montreal. Maddie Rooney going to the Minnesota Frost. Lexia Gia, another ECAC talent, moving from Boston to Seattle, coast to coast. She goes 2-year deal with PWHL Seattle. Boston extends Saulnier and Shazfal on 1-year deals. And then Taylor Gerard extends with New York. Maggie Connors extends with Toronto. And then we get into some interesting ones, and ones that I was really looking forward to. I think the first one that we saw was Elizabeth Giguere going to Ottawa from New York on a 1-year deal. Again, former Golden Knight and former UMD Bulldog. We don't like to talk about those days. Those were dark days for Clarkson. And then Jinsey Rose, formerly Jinsey Dunn, going to New York from Ottawa on a 1-year deal. And then catching back up to the present, another Clarkson Golden Knight, New York Sirens extend Lauren Bernard for a year. And then Zoe Boyd. I think this is a big one as well. Boston signed Zoe Boyd to a 1-year deal from Ottawa, and that's going to be a huge boost to their decor. I really like that. And we'll end it off with one that I think is going to be a kind of under the radar signing, but I really like the way this girl plays. It's Michaela Grant Mentis from Montreal. I got to see her in Pittsburgh play. It was Montreal versus Toronto, and PWHL Seattle picks her up on a 2-year deal. I think that's really great value for her, and I think she's going to have a really good season in the depth in Seattle. So that kind of rounds out my overview. There's definitely a lot more signings that I didn't cover, but we'll be talking more about that later after the prospect draft and when we get to roster creation and lineup charts. So, but switching on to, again, the draft that is tomorrow night as we're recording, but it's going to be interesting. I think right now it's pretty consensus that New York's going to go with Kalti Kaltinkova, but I have heard some cries from the New York fans for Casey O'Brien as well. So we'll see if they want the pure scorer in Casey O'Brien or if they want the two-way monster that is Kalti Kaltinkova. I think that's really where you're going to define your style in New York. If you want that hard-hitting, hard forechecking center, or if you want someone who's a little bit more refined on the scoring end. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. But again, hopefully seeing some Golden Knights going in that first round, and I think we will, especially with Haley Wynn, Nicole Gosling leading the charge, maybe again even Ann Cherkowski, but gonna be a good one. And again, the two expansion teams, as Casey was lamenting, going 7 and 8 in this year's draft. Not sure if there's going to be some tampering calls, but we'll see if Casey gets those in later. But
Well, we've already had those as of last episode. All right, you got there. I was going to go with how do you see this playing out? You've got New York, Boston, Toronto, then Montreal, Ottawa, Minnesota, Vancouver, Seattle. It seems like the top three are pretty far and wide ahead of the rest of this draft, being Colton Kova, Casey O'Brien, Haley Wynn. Where do you see this shaking out? I'm with you in Colton Kova being a pretty unanimous one. But another thing we had kind of talked about before we started recording, the Sirens potentially need a little bit more on the defensive depth. Is there any chance Haley Wynn goes 1 overall? That would be a pretty big shock, I think, to the PWHL world.
As much as
no hate to Haley, who's a generational player.
Oh my God, yeah. And such a great person too. I mean, just talking with her 4 years at Clarkson, just an amazing human being. And I think she has all the talent in the world. If there wasn't a forward as great as Kalti Kaltinkova or Casey O'Brien, she would be a lock to go number 1. But I think with New York, yes, they do definitely need some defensive depth, but I think their top 4, Ella Shelton, Allison Simpson, Micah Zandy Hart, and Jamie Bourbonnais. And then they just added Jincy Rose in free agency. I think they're okay right now for the defensive depth, and I don't think they want to stick a Haley Wynn or a Nicole Gosling in their bottom pairing. I think that might stunt their growth just a little bit in the trying to get used to the pro game and how fast it is. So I think I'm going to go Haley Wynn at 2, actually. I don't think Boston needs quite as much on the offensive end for Casey O'Brien. I mean, it's definitely worthwhile considering just as a dynamic of a player that she is. But right now, they only have 5D rostered in Boston with Zoe Boyd, Megan Keller, Hadley Hartmetz, Ryland McKinnon, and Daniela Pejova. I think Haley Wynn would fit right into that top 4 and be playing right in front of Aaron Frankel. And I think that would be a really good look for Boston's defense. So I think that's going to go. And then I think with the 3rd overall pick, I think they're going to go with Casey O'Brien. I think that's going to be my 1, 2, 3 right there.
You got 3 future national stars on the defensive line in Haley Wynn, Rory Gilday, and Nicole Gosling, all who have represented in IIHF World Championships for their respective countries. Wynn and Gilday, both USA members. Gosling, not there this past season, but 2 years ago, won gold with Team Canada on their blue line. So plenty of depth and just scratching the surface of what's to come, thinking about the 2026 prospect draft that is going to be undeniably phenomenal with the talent coming out of the college game. The PWHL is hot right now. It's maybe the hardest ticket in the world right now to get is a PWHL draft ticket, Jake. I'm lucky enough to be a credentialed media member headed that way, about to hop in the car and get up to Ottawa tomorrow night to cheer on some green and gold here, and very excited, buddy. What's going on the rest of the week for you other than maybe a little bit of YouTube stream and trying to catch some of the same?
Yeah, definitely watching the draft tomorrow once I get back from my baseball game I'm playing. But yeah, I think just continuing the baseball trend and then trying to come up with some topics for off-season hockey that we're now officially in. I know we're going to be bringing you weekly shows, hopefully, this entire off-season. So I think I'm going to help out with some content ideas, and maybe, just maybe, we get the whole group on for a little trivia session if we can get our schedules to align. I think that will be a fun one. But real quick, going back to PWHL, I just saw something I wanted to bring up with the goaltending situation. One of my favorite things to talk about, as Casey knows, in Toronto, they signed Elaine Chuli, but while they had Reagan Kirk and Kristen Campbell, and I saw some things go out. I think it was Jocks and Jills that put this out, but they were thinking about putting Kristen Campbell as the third string goaltender in Toronto. And she was the goaltender of the year, the inaugural season of the PWHL. Casey, the depth of this league, and if we just went to 8 teams where we got 20 more roster spots pretty much each for Vancouver and Seattle, how insane is it that the talent level is so high and so many that a goaltender like Kristen Campbell is getting relegated to a third string goaltender role?
Well, Jake, you and I both have seen it firsthand, and it's no surprise to either of us. But for maybe the casual hockey fan or just the casual sports fan, you could see where the surprise is. I think this league is just on the boom, and I would not be surprised if we got a couple more expansion locations upcoming in the next year, and maybe 2 more to follow that. You could easily see. Calgary was a city that was talked about. Edmonton had so much success on that tour around the country. Detroit is desperate to get one, and maybe that comes in relocation if Boston or New York can't figure out attendance and revenue numbers. But there's all kinds of talent coming through the pipeline, and it starts tomorrow as the next generation of stars are going to have their name called in a very exciting night upcoming here. I've survived the heat. My microphone is about to slip out of my hands here, but we made it through, buddy. And as you mentioned, you hinted at it. We're coming at you weekly, and for the next few days here, it's going to be multiple times per week. We've got this episode here on Tuesday. We're coming right back on Friday with NHL Draft Preview. And then we're only going to wait a few days after that, dropping on Monday, the free agency super show, going through all 32 teams, their free agency setups, their cap space, their UFAs, their needed positions. And we've got some voices that are coming on to join the show as well, as we are just hitting our stride here. We just got Colin Kapoor back out of the ECHL in Lake Tahoe, and potentially another budding ECHL star that will be joining. I'll leave that one TBD until the official announcement. But upcoming, we're just about to get going. We're going to be one of the only media outlets, Jake, going through the entire summer and carrying weekly content. If you're desperate for some hockey talk, we've got it right here on the Fifth Liners. Episode 33 up and gone now with Jake Swanson. I'm Casey Ditzel. We appreciate everybody who tunes in. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe. We've got you on YouTube and Spotify. Content coming out on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Fifth Liners Pod for Instagram and TikTok, at Fifth Line Pod on X. It's number 5TH, and Fifth Liners Podcast on YouTube and Spotify. But we are going to be pumping through it here for the rest of the offseason and right into the next season as the 25-26 season rather is just around the corner. Jake, talk to you in a couple days. Appreciate your work. Appreciate your insight. And until next time, have a good one, everybody.